It started with crayons. A Sunday morning, quiet and soft. My daughter sat at the kitchen table with her tongue peeking out the side of her mouth, focused in that way only small children can be when they think the world is watching. She was drawing, not a rainbow this time, or a cat with 6 legs like last week, but something more deliberate. Names. Boxes. Lines connecting them like telephone wires. Family tree, she said proudly, holding it up with both hands. My teacher said to make one. We all have roots. I smiled and reached for it, expecting to see the usual suspects: her name, mine, my husband's, my parents', a stray cousin if she was feeling ambitious. But as I looked closer, I saw something I wasn't prepared for. Under my husband's name, just below the box that read Dad, there were 2 branches instead of 1. 2. One led to my daughter. The other, written in the same messy scrawl, a different color, led to another name. A name I didn't recognize. Who's this? I asked, pointing at it gently. She smiled. That's Daddy's other daughter. The room went quiet. I waited for her to laugh. For her to say she made it up. For her to shrug and tell me it was a character from a story. But she didn't. Daddy said she lives somewhere else, she added, like she was talking about the weather. She's not my sister, just kind of. I stared at the name again. It was short. Simple. A real name. Not the kind she usually invents in her make-believe games. And it was spelled correctly. Too correctly. The paper trembled slightly in my hand, but my voice stayed calm. When did Daddy tell you about her? She shrugged. I don't know. Last time he took me to the park, I think. He said not to tell anyone 'cause it might confuse people. Confuse people. That phrase echoed in my chest louder than it should have. I kissed her forehead and told her she did a beautiful job. I hung the family tree on the fridge like any proud parent would. Then I stepped into the hallway, phone in hand, and stared at my contact list like it had suddenly become a puzzle. I didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, I just sat on the edge of the couch, looking at that crayon drawing through the open doorway, my daughter now humming softly to herself, as if she hadn't just opened a door I didn't know existed. It wasn't just the existence of the name that got to me. It was the way she said it. So casually. So effortlessly. Like it was already a part of her world. Like this other daughter had always been there, just waiting to be acknowledged. The silence in the house felt louder than the words she'd spoken. And suddenly I wasn't looking at a child's school project anymore. I was looking at a secret. One drawn in crayon. Hung up with a magnet shaped like a flower. And for the first time since I married my husband, I realized I didn't know everything I thought I did. Not even close. I didn't mention it that night. Not at dinner. Not after our daughter was asleep. Not when he brushed his teeth and kissed my forehead like every other ordinary evening. I just watched him. Quietly. The way you watch something that might break if you touch it too soon. He didn't seem different. That's what unnerved me. He folded the laundry like he always did. Talked about his day. Laughed at a show we both pretended to watch. But now everything he said had a shadow behind it. Everything felt like it might be part of a script. I waited until the next morning, when he was sipping his coffee at the kitchen table and scrolling through emails. That same drawing still hung on the fridge behind him, bold and bright, the way kids think truth should be. I tapped the paper lightly. She added a new name to the tree. He turned. Glanced. Smiled. Yeah, I saw that. Cute, huh? Who is it? His fingers stopped on the keyboard. Just for a second. But I noticed. She said it's your other daughter, I said calmly. She said you told her about her at the park. He set the mug down carefully. Not angry. Not surprised. Just, calculating. "Oh, that," he said, chuckling like it was nothing. She probably misunderstood. I told her a story about someone I used to know, and I think she made it part of her game. You know how kids are. My hands tightened around the chair back. She said you told her not to tell anyone. He looked up. Our eyes met. That part he hadn't expected. "She's 5, he said after a beat. "She gets things mixed up." I nodded, but something inside me pulled tight. Later that day, after he left for work, I checked our daughter's backpack. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I needed to see it again. Her teacher had sent home the project instructions. There it was, in plain words: ask your child to list all known family members and draw a simple tree including siblings, parents, and grandparents. I turned the page. Taped to the back of the instructions was a smaller version of the tree, her first draft, done at school. And there it was again. The name. Same spelling. Same placement. Same branch. This wasn't a one-time misunderstanding. This was something she remembered. Something he told her more than once. I sat on the floor in the hallway, the paper in my hands, and suddenly I felt like the outsider in my own house. I started typing the name into search bars. Social media. Old messages. Public records. Nothing came up right away, but I kept looking. It felt strange, hunting for a ghost that might be real. Chasing a child I'd never met, who might carry my husband's blood. Or might not. I didn't know which answer scared me more. The thought that he had a child he kept from me was horrifying. But the idea that he invented one to cover something else? That chilled me deeper. Either way, the crayon had already drawn the truth. And I was the one who'd never seen the full picture. Not until a 5-year-old handed it to me with pride. The internet has a way of feeding you what you're not ready to know. One search leads to another, a breadcrumb trail of usernames, vague connections, half-forgotten faces. You tell yourself you're just looking for peace of mind. But by the time the 3rd hour passes and your tea has gone cold, you know that's not true. You're not looking for peace. You're looking for confirmation. It didn't take long to find her. A profile buried beneath privacy settings. No last name. Just a photo, blurry, cropped, but unmistakable. Same nose. Same arch in the eyebrows. She looked about 11 or 12. Her name matched the one from the drawing. Her location said a nearby town, no more than 45 minutes away. I stared at the photo for a long time, not clicking on anything. Just watching. Studying. Her eyes weren't mine. They weren't even her mother's, whoever she might be. They were his. And there she was. Smiling beside a woman with auburn hair and a tired warmth in her face. They looked close. Like mother and daughter, definitely. But there was no man in any of the pictures. No father. No second adult. Just them. I clicked through the comments. Most were from classmates and cousins. But one, dated over a year ago, made me stop. Looks like someone got her dad's height. It was from someone named Karen B. No profile picture, just initials. I checked the list of mutual friends. Only one stood out. My husband. My fingers hovered over my phone. I thought about calling him. About texting. About screaming into the screen and demanding he explain why this girl existed, why he had pretended for years that she didn't. But instead, I opened our family photo album, the one we keep in the hall closet, and flipped to the page labeled 2014. A photo fell out. We were at a lake. I was leaning on his shoulder. The sunlight was too bright, the image overexposed. But in the background, on the edge of the frame, was a stroller. I didn't remember a stroller. We didn't have kids then. We weren't even talking about it. I zoomed in, digitally, scanning every corner of that photo on my phone. The stroller was turned away. No face. Just a pair of small shoes poking out. He told me it was a friend's baby that day. Some work buddy's niece. I hadn't asked questions. I was just happy we were together. But now, I wasn't sure who was visiting who. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever really known the man standing next to me in that photograph. That evening, I pulled the drawing off the fridge and stared at it again. The crayon lines were jagged. But they were certain. My daughter had drawn what she believed to be true. And the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't just a child's imagination. It was an echo. Something passed down in a voice she trusted. He had told her. And that meant he had chosen not to tell me. I folded the drawing carefully and slipped it into an envelope. Then I picked up my phone and typed a message I never thought I'd write. Hi. I believe our daughters may be sisters. I sent it to the woman from the profile. No last name. No accusation. Just the one thing I needed more than anything else. A starting point. Because if my husband wouldn't give me the truth, then maybe the person who lived with it all along would. He didn't ask how my day was. And I didn't volunteer. There was a new silence between us now. Not the kind born from exhaustion or routine, but the kind that stretched between two people who both know something is coming and neither wants to name it first. Dinner was chicken and rice. He ate like nothing had changed. I picked at my plate, watching him. Every motion, every breath, every smile, it all felt studied now, like he was performing the role of a husband he thought I still believed in. When our daughter went to bed, I waited a few minutes before I spoke. I found her. He didn't look up at first. Just kept drying a plate with the dish towel. Found who? I gave him the chance. The soft opening. But he didn't take it. Your daughter. Now he paused. The dish towel froze mid-wipe. His shoulders tensed, almost imperceptibly. He set the plate down on the rack and finally turned around. What are you talking about? His voice was even. Almost bored. Like we were discussing a bill I forgot to pay. You told our daughter she had a sister. You didn't think I'd notice when she drew that name twice? He gave a dry laugh. She must have misunderstood. I told you, it was a story. Stop lying. He blinked. I found the girl, I said, voice low. She lives 40 minutes away. Her mother's name is Emily. You used to work with her, before we met. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Heavy. Like something thick and ancient had finally risen to the surface, and now we both had to look it in the eye. He looked tired suddenly. Not guilty. Just tired. She wasn't supposed to be part of this. I almost laughed at the phrasing. She's a child, not a broken vase you left in another room. I didn't want to lose you, he said. When we met, it was new. It felt like a clean slate. I didn't know how to explain that part of my life without scaring you off. You mean you didn't want to explain a daughter, I said, cutting the words carefully. So you just erased her? I didn't erase her, he said quickly. I supported her. Financially. I send money every month. Her mom and I had an agreement. I nodded slowly. An agreement that didn't include telling your wife? She didn't want a full relationship, he said. She made that clear from the start. She said if I wasn't going to be consistent, it was better I stayed out of the picture. But you were consistent enough to tell our 5-year-old? He looked away. She asked if she had siblings, he said quietly. I didn't want to lie. I stared at him. The irony was suffocating. You didn't want to lie to her, I repeated. But you lied to me. For years. I was protecting us. No, I said, voice steady. You were protecting your image. Your comfort. Your control. He didn't respond. And I didn't expect him to. Because the truth wasn't about a girl he never told me about. It was about the man he'd chosen to be when no one was watching. The one who compartmentalized people like storage bins. Out of sight. Out of consequence. And now, one of those bins had cracked open. Drawn in crayon. By a child who thought families were supposed to be whole. The message I sent sat unread for 2 days. I didn't check obsessively, I told myself I wasn't that kind of person. But every time I picked up my phone, I felt the weight of it sitting there. Suspended. Like whatever came next depended on what that woman chose to say. When the notification finally came in, I froze. Her reply was simple. I've been waiting for this. Her name was Emily, and yes, she confirmed, her daughter was his. She didn't ask how I found them. She didn't sound angry. Just steady. Like someone who had long since stopped expecting apologies and learned how to live without them. We spoke on the phone later that evening, after our daughter had fallen asleep and my husband was out, claiming he needed air. I walked out onto the porch, phone pressed to my ear, and for the first time in this entire unraveling, I heard the voice of someone who'd been carrying the same weight from the other side of the curtain. I used to tell myself it wasn't his fault, Emily said. That he didn't know how to be present. That maybe he didn't want to ruin things for you. I didn't say anything. He came to the hospital when she was born. He held her. And then he left. I told him that unless he was going to be consistent, I didn't want her growing up with empty promises. And he agreed. Too easily. I gripped the porch railing. She's a good kid, Emily added. Smart. Kind. She draws. A lot. I could almost see her, another little girl sitting with crayons and paper, telling a story she didn't fully understand yet. She's been asking about him lately, Emily continued. Not in a sad way. Just curious. She wants to know why she doesn't have a dad like the other kids. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else she said. I thought about my own daughter's drawing. How easily she had added that extra branch. How natural it seemed to her, even when she didn't grasp the weight of what it meant. And I thought about the girl on the other side, the one who had no tree at all, because someone decided silence was easier than honesty. Emily didn't ask me for anything. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't vindictive. She had simply accepted what was missing and built a world around it. But I hadn't. Not yet. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, I admitted. I don't want to blow up everything. You don't have to, she said gently. But maybe your daughter deserves to know her sister. And maybe mine deserves to know she was never forgotten. Even if he won't be the one to show her. That night, I lay awake and stared at the ceiling, the space beside me cold and empty. My husband hadn't come home. And I didn't reach out. Because something in me had already shifted. I was no longer trying to protect the version of our life that looked clean from the outside. I was beginning to understand that families aren't made from keeping secrets. They're made from showing up, even when it's complicated. Especially then. In the morning, I pulled the drawing off the fridge one more time. And I added something. Just one word, beside the extra branch my daughter had drawn so innocently. Sister. It was enough for now. The rest, I would draw with them. Together. They met at a park. Neutral ground. No heavy conversation, no formal introductions. Just two little girls, one younger by a few years, holding identical sketchbooks and a box of crayons between them like it was the most natural thing in the world to share. I sat on one bench. Emily sat on the other. We watched in silence for a long while, letting them shape their own kind of language of drawings, giggles, the occasional shout of look, when one created a dragon with 3 wings or a princess with sneakers. It was awkward at first. Not between them. Between us. There were so many things that could have been said, but none of them needed to be. Not now. What mattered sat on the grass in the shade, legs crossed, cheeks flushed from laughter. They had no context. No resentment. Just crayons and a shared branch on a tree that neither of them had planted, but somehow knew how to water anyway. She's a lot like him, Emily said softly, nodding toward her daughter. The eyes. The stubbornness. I nodded. Mine has his silence. We both laughed a little at that. The kind of laugh that comes from finally saying something true out loud. He hadn't reached out. Not to her. Not to me. The night I confronted him, he left and never really came back, not emotionally, at least. He stayed in the house, slept in the same bed, answered when spoken to. But he was gone. Whatever mask he had worn had crumbled, and he wasn't interested in rebuilding anything beneath it. I didn't push. Eventually, he moved into the guest room. Then, one day, I came home from work and found a note on the counter and half his closet empty. No explanation. Just absence. And honestly, I was okay. Because the family that remained was no longer made of polite illusions. It was made of hard truths and the choice to meet anyway. 2 mothers. 2 girls. One broken line that didn't end the story, just changed its direction. As the sun started to dip, my daughter ran up to me with her sketchbook. Look, she said proudly, flipping it open. The page showed 2 stick figures, one with pigtails, one with short hair. Both were smiling. Above them, a tree. Lopsided. Branches reaching far. One had a tiny heart hanging from it. I looked at the other girl's page. Nearly identical. Different colors. Same shape. I told her we're sisters, my daughter said matter-of-factly. Not the regular kind, but still real. The other girl nodded. Yeah. That's better anyway. Emily and I looked at each other. There was something healing in their simplicity. In their refusal to complicate what we adults had twisted and buried and tried to forget. Maybe this was what family really was. Not who's on your paperwork. Not who shares your address. But who shows up, who listens, who hands you a crayon when yours breaks. As we packed up to leave, my daughter whispered, "Can she come over sometime?" Of course, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I meant it without hesitation. Because this story wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about rebuilding. Not the kind that requires blueprints or plans, but the kind that starts when 2 children meet on the grass and draw something new together. Something no one ever gave them. A family tree that finally made space for the truth. And for every missing name.